for us so far, we have not had any major exits. We're still our vacancy, our occupancy is still in the mid 90s, which is pretty good for this market. Also, you have to take into consideration, because the integrated resorts and casinos are here, there exists an agglomeration economy, particularly in the gaming sector. So what happened was, around last year, 2019 to 2020, as the gaming industry was basically exploding, they had to go outside of the Bay Area because there was no supply. That's why they started going to fringe areas of Makati, Quezon City, Mandaluyong. But if ever they would let go of space, they'll probably keep the spaces they have in the Bay Area, just because most of the players or most of the operators are also involved in other gaming operations.
Hi everyone, we have very, very special guests for today. We have the CEO of DM Wenceslao, Buds Wenceslao. We also have their Chief Financial Officer, Attorney Herson Asiddao, and also their VP for Corporate Planning, Julius Guevara, joining us in the podcast. Gentlemen, how are you? How's everything?
Hi Marvin, thanks for inviting us again for your podcast, and hope we can give you a fun show for your viewers.
And I hope that people get insight from all of this as well, so that the whole goal is what we've been talking offline is for people to know the companies and also get to decide based on the fundamentals and the business as well. But before that, I'd like to break the ice.
Sure.
What were you guys doing? What was the first thing that was on the top of your head when the lockdown was announced and we were entering a pandemic that we have never seen before?
Obviously, this was an unprecedented situation. My first thought when it was announced was, wow, this is really happening. And going into it, it was like maybe it's just gonna be like a week, just to let things cool down. But obviously, it went further than that. But we're happy, or we're glad that we had the contingencies in place to make sure that the company continued its operations. Because obviously, we had tenants who are operating 24/7, like BPOs, and outsourcing companies and call centers. And we also had residential tenants, so we wanted to be sure that we were running smoothly, even though technically we weren't allowed to operate.
There are a lot of people also who are not too familiar with DMW. They know it as a property developer that's exposed to the Bayside area of Metro Manila. But other than that, I want people to have a sense also of what the company is, how it started, how did it boom to where it is also right now.
So DM Wenceslao, that's actually named after our founder, my grandfather, Delphine M. Wenceslao. As you can see, I'm also his namesake. So I'm a third generation Wenceslao working for the family. So it started in 1965. It was a purely construction company. We were doing a lot of work, building roads, bridges, mostly horizontal developments. Actually, our last major infrastructure project was the Tarlac-Pangasinan-La Union Expressway. So we've been doing that for a while. We're a quadruple A construction company. I think less than 5% of all construction companies in the Philippines have that rating. It means we're basically, in terms of construction capacity, we can bid on any project because of our size and our experience. We've completed more than 100 projects. Early 1990s when we started to do reclamation. So in the 1990s, we got the project to reclaim what was then known as Central Business Park Island DNC, which became Asiana City. So we reclaimed about 204 hectares. About half of that went to the government, which now became Pagcor Entertainment City. We kept most of it. About 70 hectares is still left within our control, within our mother company, as well as with DM Wenceslao, the operating company. So it was about 2004 when we started our vertical developments. At the time we were just a construction business. We didn't know anything about real estate apart from our smaller projects. So we were trying to do some JVs with other developers. But the Asian financial crisis hit, right, in the early 2000s. So nobody was had the appetite to take on this kind of project. So that's when our chairman just decided, let's just do it ourselves and let's just learn from doing. So in 2006, we started our first commercial development. In 2009, we started our first BPO office building, Asiana 1. We're actually right now on our 5th office building. From about 14,000 square meters, we currently have about 90,000, and we're gearing up to build around another 300,000 square meters of commercial office space, as well as 100,000 square meters of residential. In 2017, we launched our first residential project that sold out within less than a year. We're actually turning over those units right now. We're currently building another 4 condos also in the Manila Bay area. But aside from that, we also became involved in the infrastructure of building a city. So we're not just building the vertical projects, but everything including the sidewalks, canopies, the underground utilities. So this is where our construction experience, our construction heritage comes into play in terms of planning, building, and now operating and maintaining these urban spaces.
I actually had the chance to go there last year, and I was impressed also on how master planned the entire area is. But I just wanna chime in on something you mentioned, and anyone can answer this. You mentioned about the crisis in '97. Given that we are also in another unprecedented crisis, how different do you think this is to the different crises in the past decade or so, and how impacted you as well as a business?
That was purely an economic crisis. This is obviously much different in terms of being a health crisis. So in those kinds of economic crises, actually, whenever there's an economic crisis, if you'll notice from the Asian financial crisis to the Great Credit Crunch, which happened in 2007, 2008, every time that happens, the Philippines actually increases in terms of its economic prospects. That's because the Philippines is always a good alternative to much more established and basically more expensive markets. So right now, I think even though it's affecting the pandemic globally, we're still seeing, at least depending on the industry, we're still seeing some resiliency in our markets. Vacancies are still at manageable levels, at least for DM Wenceslao, and we're seeing strength within our industry.
I think we've learned our lessons from the Asian financial crisis and the global financial crisis. So we've put a lot of safeguards in terms of banking and finance, in terms of the real estate industry, the housing industry. A lot of safeguards are also put in place. So like if you compare it to the Asian financial crisis, where there were several developers that went belly up, this time around we haven't seen any major companies declare bankruptcy. So I think we're more prepared for this crisis, I guess, in succeeding crises as well.
And I guess that's what makes it interesting, because at the start of the pandemic, people were scared that this might accelerate a bubble, given that prices have gone up. But looking at it from where we are right now, 8 to 9 months, it's not happening. It's not happening at all. People who love fundamentals and the numbers always talk about durable competitive advantage. Looking at stocks that will last for a long period of time.
We have been repeating this to the investors and to the analysts before. You can check our numbers and compare it with our competitors within the industry. Basically, for the past 5 years, we have the best in terms of net income ratio. We have the best in terms of gross profit ratio. And the fundamentals of the company, we have a very low debt to equity ratio. So this means that the company's fundamentals is very, very stable. Now, the main reason behind this is a combination of a lot of factors. First and foremost, we have a land bank, which we acquired using reclamation as a method at a very cheap cost. Aside from that, the past few years when we start doing our developments, most of our developments are actually jackpot projects. I mean, it's slam dunk project. As mentioned by Buds a while ago, Pixel was sold out in 7 months after it was launched. Now, we were able to collect a lot of from the buyers before the project even started. And the same story is repeating for our second residential project. Right now, we've collected more than $1 billion for that project, and we're still doing we just finished the pile driving works last year, and right now we're doing the basement of the project. So we have enough under our chest in order for us to pursue and continue what we have done, and that's the reason why we have been very resilient as well. Even from the time that this pandemic happened, I know that the company is very strong. And I know that the company can be able to cope up and adapt to the situation, notwithstanding the pandemic.
Most of the major real estate developers, what's the one asset that fuels their growth? So it's actually land, right?
Yeah.
So if you're looking at the amount or the availability of land bank that will fuel DM Wenceslao's or DMW's growth, you can see that there's a huge amount left within our land bank. Right now, our 71 hectares, substantial percentage of that still remains undeveloped. And if you're looking at the quality of the land bank, again, you're looking at when real estate developers say location, they're basically talking about how close your project or your developments are to the most productive parts of the city. So let's say, in Manila, the traditional CBD is Fort and Makati. But if you look at it from a real estate standpoint, what's the closest master plan communities near there? It's basically the Bay Area, where Asiana City is, and Ortigas. But if you're looking at it from a traveling distance point of view, you would say that the Manila Bay Area is much nearer because of the Nayay Expressway, because of the traveling distance. And if you're looking at it from that standpoint, and you're looking at which developer has the most amount of land bank that can fuel it out, it's basically the DM Wenceslao, just because most of our land bank is near that area.
And it makes sense, no? Every time people analyze property stocks, also they look at the infrastructure close to it. And what's so interesting about that is you have Cavitex, and you have Ross Boulevard, then you have EDSA, then you have the Expressway, right smack connecting at least close to the development as well.
One of the major factors also is the diversity of industries here. Obviously, apart from the typical office and residential developments, a big anchor here are the entertainment and tourism destinations. 60% of all future hotel supply is being built in this area because of the integrated resorts. At the same time, because of the entertainment factors being built on beside our developments, the arenas and the concert halls and obviously the casinos. All of this will bring an additional diversity of industries in the area.
When you were headed towards an IPO, one of the things that struck me here is that your revenue is recurring. A large chunk also of what you would get is from rentals, and I think a lot of people don't see that as something that's very, very stable and something that's good. And I just want to zero in on this. The perception on the Bay is basically pogos, and people have been, I guess there's a sense of anxiety that there's been pogos leaving over the past few months as well. Has that in any way affected cash flow, revenue, or rental and tenants as well?
For us, so far, we have not had any major exits. We're still, our vacancy, our occupancy is still in the mid-90s, which is pretty good for this market. Also, you have to take into consideration, because the integrated resorts and casinos are here, there exists an agglomeration economy, particularly in the gaming sector. So what happened was, around last year, 2019 to 2020, as the gaming industry was basically exploding, they had to go outside of the Bay Area because there was no supply. That's why they started going to fringe areas of Makati, Quezon City, Mandaluyong. But if ever they would let go of space, they'll probably keep the spaces they have in the Bay Area, just because most of the players or most of the operators are also involved in other gaming operations, like junket operations, bringing in high rollers and whatnot. So we foresee that if ever they will keep most of their supply. It's probably going to still remain in the Manila Bay Area. Because even right now, within our new office buildings that hasn't been turned on, we're still getting inquiries from gaming companies.
That's so interesting, because when I was also looking at your numbers also for the year, 2020 figures are actually even better still than 2019, and in the midst of the pandemic, and everything has been recurring also and very, very steady as well.
Yeah, 67% of our top line for the first 3 quarters of this year came from our recurring business. So as I've mentioned a while ago, notwithstanding that we have this pandemic, our top line for our recurring business is almost the same because of the straight line method of recognizing for revenues for rentals. and we have given some small discounts and on a case to case basis. But in terms of the overall effect for our top line, we don't have any.
You said you have a large uh, space that's not yet used. How long would it take for you to be able to develop everything? That's the first question. And then second, after that, do you have any plans also to go outside the Bay Area? Assuming that also there will come a point in time that you will be able to take up all of the unused land in your property.
Our plan really is it's going to take at least 15 to 20 years
Wow.
for us to use up. And also, some of the projects that we're developing right now is for interim uses, so they could be redeveloped. So there will be in our forecast, like for decades, there will still be a lot of construction, a lot of development that will be going on in Asiana City, which is our crown jewel. But having said that, we do have some other projects lined up. We have a parcel of land in Cavite, in Ciudad Nuevo, Cavite City. We do have a reclamation project in Mandaue, Cebu. Just waiting for the studies to be completed and the permits to be lined up. And of course, the market timing. That's I guess a major consideration here, whether or not the timing is right for us to move forward with these projects. Apart from that, we're consistently looking for opportunities to acquire more land outside of our current land holdings. Particularly in the major CBDs here in Metro Manila.
I'm so curious on this. In your latest disclosure, you purchased a property, a building in Makati. I just want to know the logic and the strategy behind that. And normally you'd buy large chunks of land, and for this instance, why a building, and then why in that particular area as well?
Our strategy is that if ever we're gonna make an investment decision, it has to be more prime than what Asiana is currently, and it should be able to deliver the yields that we are targeting. If it could actually exceed the yields that we're currently making here in Asiana. So in the Makati property that we acquired, as you know, Makati is still pretty much the premier CBD currently here in the Philippines. So, it was a no-brainer for us. The pricing was very attractive. And the prospects for developing that property is also quite attractive. There's still a stable market in Makati. So, the stars lined up, so to speak.
Got it. What's your sense on how the property market also will be in general, in line with what's happening in the Philippine economy, given that there's so many things that are moving, from the vaccine to the stimulus of the government? How will things play out for 2021 and the years moving forward?
I think if the stock market, both locally and the States, so if that's an indication, that Dow Jones is now at an historical high, right? And our market is also recovering. So the market is already anticipating that we are on a recovery mode, right? So I think once we do get the vaccine, it might take some time, more time, and it might take a lot more time for things to stabilize. At least the fundamentals are there for us to be able to recover. I always quote something that Bernie Villegas said at one of the economic forums during the height of the pandemic. He said, "Don't look at the quarterly GDP performance. Look at our long-term fundamentals. We're at a demographic sweet spot. We're in, we have a young, educated population. We're also entering the, what we call the Asian century, and geographically we're positioned, right in the middle of it, where for the next few decades, we will see economic growth in our region, and also, we are propping up our macroeconomic fundamentals, the build program, and strengthening our financial foundations as well. So I think, once we do get over this hump, things will still continue to grow at a faster pace.
That's why even the pedestrian skywalks, so you can cross Macapal, Asian Avenue, going to the Ayala Mall, all of these are pre-planned. We're already executing that because when you talk about the last mile solution for mobility and transport, we're not thinking of it in terms of anything with wheels. We're thinking of it in terms of your own, using your own legs to be able to travel. And again, that's why this pandemic has shown us that when it comes down to these types of situations, wouldn't you want to be in a walkable community?